Time for the second review of the night. We are game 3 of the Rift Rivals Best of 5 G2 Esports versus Team Liquid. And our eyes are open. It's not just the white background that's caused that, but also we've been talking about trends between the teams at Rift Rivals and their regions as well. G2 Esports, we flashed them on the screen before. They are a symptom of the problem that NA came down with. And I'm not talking about C9 sickness, but the fact that G2 just like the other EU teams, the early game plans that NA couldn't deal with. Comparing G2 at Rift Rivals to G2 in the LEC, these are the LEC numbers. Season 1444 gold, really strong early game, even after they lost to Fnatic in kind of spectacular fashion in the first 15 minutes of that series. Strong numbers, 22.8 CSD. We don't need to anymore give G2 credit of what their early games look like. I see a Monka S in chat because 26 minutes 49 average game time. That is shellacking territory. Like, this is solo queue average game time. If this was the average game time for solo queue, all games across the world, Riot would be pumped. So for it to be pro games, average win time is pretty insane, 26:49. On the other side, coming into this tournament, well, you know, they played 4 games. It went up to 3,072. You will notice that the goal difference per minute is lower because G2 did lose a couple of games at this tournament and were set behind. But the leveling up and more than doubling their early game lead here was pretty insane. And G2 were just ultra aggressive at this tournament and super down for bloody games. At this point, you can see they average 27.3 kills per game in 26 minutes 41. So they're averaging, sorry, I should say kills or deaths per game. So in a game with G2, there's more than one person dying or killing someone per minute. So that's the CKPM, combined kills per minute. 100% first blood rate. Good job, Yankos, and his link up with his laners. Spoilers also for this VOD, apparently. And then we compare that to the LEC. Almost the same, right? It was 26:49, 26:41. In the LEC, even more. 32 combined kills per minute in the LEC, which means that every minute, like 1 point... Let's think about this. 1.3? 1.25 people are dying per minute, one way or the other, which is pretty insane. So G2 playing super bloody games, as we know. So that part doesn't surprise. You don't need me to explain G2. The Team Liquid one is pretty interesting, because Team Liquid have had a really impressive early game in North America, but we already reviewed in our first review of the day, you know, a TSM team that I think is pretty symptomatic of the early games in NA being quite lackluster. You know, they were definitely macro womboed to death in one way or the other. It's kind of a fun thing to think of. Usually a wombo combo is Orianna Malphite, but we're talking about kind of the macro and the warding stuff that really let down TSM. In NA, they have gotten more assertive and faster. I have Team Liquid in watching their games so far. In the regular season, like, they haven't been grinding like they were in spring. So credit to Team Liquid for getting better at that. Average game time a lot longer, as you can tell. Games a lot less bloody, only around the 21 average combined kills per minute. Combined kills in 32 minutes, so we're talking about much less bloody games overall. But interestingly, jumping to Rift Rivals, they were actually able to buffer some of the huge negative CSDs. We saw TSM with negative 2,500, C9 with their hobbled roster were negative 6,000, so a bit harder to give too much kind of hate towards them. But for TSM, Team TSM on the mind, Team Liquid to stay largely positive is pretty complimentary of what they're doing. We're not going to be talking about CSDs too much because Sonataric stuff can muddy the waters, and they played 2 games of Sona. But overall, I thought that Team Liquid were able to actually kind of stay competitive at this tournament. And it did show that trying this style on the domestic stage against, let's say, inferior opposition than kind of the level these 3 EU teams in particular provided, did kind of prepare Team Liquid well for this tournament. Like they're actually able to increase their gold per minute. And this wasn't a flawless tournament from them, especially their first game they played. Not in this tournament. The first game they played against Fnatic, like Fnatic were able to just super proactively smash them in what was a very straightforward kind of Fnatic victory here. But TL in general have been able to live up to their reputation. Like they're the first place North American team. That hasn't always meant that they were the North American team most ready to deal with foreign opposition. Like that hasn't always been the way in the past. And yes, there is the asterisk of that Fnatic game, right? Dan was in the roster that time. But let's get to this game between Team Liquid and G2. If you think back to what happened at MSI, there was the final, obviously, that was super easy. Closeout from G2. The TL fans would like you to remember kind of Caps being targeted and taken down in his Corki game where he tried to make everything happen in the second game of the round robin stage. And that was a TL victory at the time. So what it all meant for this match here and whether they would even get G2 to play kind of a predictable, kind of normal style. Like what G2 would show up here was going to be super up in the air, I think, overall. So let's get to the draft here between G2 and TL. Might be misremembering the TL Fnatic game. TSM fans are delusional, but we'll focus on this one for this particular game. Bans on the red side, very standard, just banning away the Meta, Karma, and Sejuani Yumi. So those bans, very normal. G2 just denied the Sona here. They didn't want to play against Sona Kanch. They had already lost to the Sona once this tournament, so I guess they tried to make it a bit more honest. So first pick here with Aatrox off the board, with Tahm Kench priority going to be lower because the Sona's not up. Like first pick is actually opened up in a pretty big way here. But we actually see a champion that gets permabanned in Korea just locked at first pick. So the Aurelia is locked in. It's usually a Wonder champion. He's the better of the Aurelia players. Caps is decent, but I think overall Aurelia's a better top lane pick in general. Hovering a TFT comp. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of TFT shoutouts at this tournament, which I thought was pretty amusing. And I thought this Yasuo Gragas was a really interesting decision from Team Liquid because against the sort of comps that G2 like to run, where they like to run a lot of early priority and then initiation for mid-game fights, Gragas Yasuo is both risky and also papers over a lot of issues. The reason why I say that is that Gragas Yasuo is really good for punishing enemy mid laners who overextend. And Caps overextends in multiple different ways. He either is going to attempt to win lane by taking kind of big damage trades and looking for the outplay, or he's going to roam at a weird time where if he's on a ward, a Cask from out of vision and a Yasuo is going to take down most mid laners. So even though for the first 6 levels, Gragas Yasuo doesn't really have anywhere near that level of pressure on mid lane, it does scale to be, you better know where Gragas is at all points, otherwise he can just go mid and profit with kills. And that does end up kind of being eerily symptomatic of what happens in this series. Seeing Gragas Yasuo, G2 just take an entire duo, and there's actually a point I talk about quite a bit is duos of picks power at the moment. I'm actually a big believer that duos of picks can be really powerful. And it's not just Xayah Rakan bot lane duo, but also these Gragas Yasuo drafts that we're seeing as well, where these two champions can occupy the bot lane, unlikely given that it's Core JJ and Double Lift. They can occupy the mid jungle, and even if they are predictably mid jungle for TL, it always gives you something reliable around the mid lane. So if you want mid priority and you play this well and you are practiced on it, if it starts to get mid lane priority, it gives you a lot of mid lane priority. So Xayah Rakan, Gragas Yasuo, both of them best friends forever. TL kind of thinking about what top lane champions they can consider here. or potentially one part of a bot lane if they can try to just fill out the rest of a bot lane. So they play around here. They want to flex because you don't have to send Yasuo to the mid lane, but because it's TL, you can't. And this is like, if this is someone like, Dumb One Gaming, you definitely take a flex champion here because it's impact and double lift. They don't decide to keep a ruse going. So another team might have taken the Akali. They flashed here. Akali is seen as a winning lane matchup into the Yasuo, which we talked about in our first review of the night. They're just going to take Lux support as a strong support for Core JJ. Karma is the only support banned when it comes to support champion pool, but they want something that works against Zyra Khan, and the worry is that you ban like Lux Morgana if you're G2, and then what is there to actually attack the 2v2? Probably not that much. So I think it's fine to take the first round Lux in this scenario. No jungler taken, so trying to take away high presence junglers is TL. The moment Lux comes in, it's not Gragas support, so you know it's Gragas jungle 100%. There's a lot of junglers you can consider here. Lee Sin is one that a lot of Korean teams would default to. I think Gragas has an okay matchup against Lee Sin, but Lee Sin, if you play like Ning or super aggressive, can take a lot. And TL take a lane that tells you, look, we went Ezreal. I think if you see Ezreal in 2019, it's pretty much a sign that even though it's not Ezreal Kench, it's we're not going to play around this lane. You take Ezreal to allow yourself to play top side of the map, and I think that's heavily implied by this duo that can apply a lot of pressure. You can go as Gragas to this lane, but you take the Ezreal to be safe in the bot lane outside of maybe level 2. G2 can go a lot of ways with their draft, and they go the way of Rek'Sai plus LeBlanc, which is risky. When you see the enemy team comp, the moment you go LeBlanc Rek'Sai, you can only team fight from ahead. If you start to fall behind in this game, team fighting gets really, really hard. Given that you're picking mid jungle as well, you're picking a mid jungle that slams Yasuo Gragas early and can snowball through if you make no mistakes in the early parts of the game. But if Gragas ever turns one of the all-ins with Rek'Sai and LeBlanc, this duo can hard outscale this duo, right? Because Gragas is a better team fighter than Rek'Sai. Very often, mid-game team fights are Gragas throws out a cask and it hits Rek'Sai plus one person, or the Rakan plus one threat. You're largely going to hit a threat and then someone like Rakan or Rek'Sai, and Rek'Sai just dies in the AoE more often than not. So it is bold to take this draft, but it does end up being a quintessential G2 draft where from the early game, as we'll get the confirmation of really soon, TL have to pick a top laner. It's against Irelia. Impact doesn't play any champions that beat Irelia, but he plays GP. And GP can allow them, again, to play map objectives. And in this game, actually, you can play around Gragas Yasuo or the usual bot lane focus of the GP that we talk about. Like, usually when they pick GP, it's to help double lift and core JJ win harder. In this game, it might allow double lift and core JJ to win. It might allow Gragas and Yasuo to get over the top. So there's a lot of different ways to make that happen. Someone in chat asking what can proc Yasuo are. In this game, it's Gragas Body Slam and Gragas Ult. It's Yasuo's own Q, third Q, and there's no other procs on the team. So GP, Ezreal, and Lux have no way to proc the Yasuo ult, but Gragas does it so reliably because either you E-flash, there's no animation, you can't juke that more often than not unless you're pre-flashing, or the cask has such a wide area that it's very, very difficult to juke. So we got some cool drafts here between the two, so we should talk about what these means. TL have a hard team fight comp. TL's comp is very strong in the team fight. They can also 4-1. Their 1-3-1 is possible from ahead, but it's a bit finicky because it's Ignite Yasuo splitting and GP with teleport splitting. And if Yasuo's in a side lane, Gragas can only really go and shadow him. Otherwise, the Yasuo's not going to be there on most of their engages. So the way that comp wins the game is a bit more finicky. You don't expect GP to hard win the 1v1, which is what ends up happening, which makes it a bit more different. So the easiest way to conceptualize is as a team fight comp, because the moment that team fights start, and even skirmishes, if you're skirmishing around Gragas Yasuo, it's pretty cool that TL have a comp where everyone can kind of call in a bit of an assist. It's almost like it's like a 2v2 wrestling match, but the Gangplank, the Ezreal, and the Lux are all within earshot and can kind of shout out like reassuring words like, oh, you can do it, which is the Lux ult from really long range, or the Ezreal ult, that's a global, or the GP ult, that's a global. So there's like reassuring words from 3 members and 2 of the strongest synergistic skirmish champions, which is really cool as a lineup here. Like they have a lot of ability that wherever Gragas Yasuo start a party, Impact, Double Lift, and Core JJ can send them moral support from range. And we already mentioned that if Gragas Yasuo start winning against most likely Rek'Sai LeBlanc, that's kind of the 2v2 matchup you expect, that win can persist forever. It kind of closes out the game. Meanwhile, Jankos and Caps have a lot of early firepower, but a mistake around, say, like 8 to 15 minutes, there's a chance that it's locked out of the game. So it's always kind of a skill check for Jankos and Caps. They've got more firepower. They've definitely got the firepower, but you need to be really honest in how you're using it. Meanwhile, G2, on their side, have pretty much a win lane, win game, snowball through them in 26 minutes comp, which obviously fits to the style we've talked about. Zyra Khan beat Lux Ezreal pretty hard at level 1. If Lux and Ezreal make the decision to enter lane second, they can definitely be all in if you get a level 2 option here. And Lux always has to be really careful around level 1 to not have to blow flash, kind of reminiscent of the last time these two teams faced at an international event at MSI Final, where Tahm Kench flashed at level 1. And I think of Ezreal Lux as kind of like a 2019 Summer Evolved version of Varus Tahm Kench, in that Lux's flash is just as important as Tahm's. She is oppressive in lane, can push up, and can take turret plates like crazy with a ranged champion with a shield. And yet, just like kind of Jace falling apart in the top side, if his flash is down, if her flash is down, things can really go bad here, because it's so hard to enter lane against the engage range of the Rakan. So this lane can snowball through that one purely from all-in pressure on either member. LeBlanc does good things against Yasuo early, pre-1 item. Again, we already talked about how 2v2 is won by Rek'Sai LeBlanc. And then Aurelia has a lot of different options against GP. GP's only option is to stave off death, i.e. can just sit back and get grass procs and maybe get a health lead. If Aurelia plays perfectly, it's a very Aurelia favored matchup. Just kind of like the mid lane, though, from TL. If you make a mistake against GP and he gets 1 kill, he actually just kind of closes the laning phase himself. And kind of weird that ends up being a premonition here is that TL have a draft that can punish. And so that's already a good sign from TL. They found a draft that suits them, that can actually punish the enemy, which many NA teams weren't able to do in this particular tournament. So that's pretty cool that TL were able to put that together. Yet, if G2 play perfectly, G2 win. Is kind of the way you think about it. Level 1 comes in, TL comes as a unit. They're not looking to vertical jungle, as you can tell. No Olafs in this game to make it super weird. And they went for this play, which was super cool from Core JJ. The tactical inting. In case you guys are wondering, you start the game at 500 gold. So at 500 gold, if you scroll back, you can buy... He starts off with 1 potion. So he's got 100 gold unspent. But it's all about pushing up here, as you can see. Gets 33 gold and has to be in range of double lift. But gets the reset here, spends the rest of the gold, and gets that extra potion. And that's the big thing that they do here. With 50 unspent gold. I apologize, it went up to 400 gold. So with 50 unspent gold, you cannot go any regen plus a control ward with specifically 50 gold unspent. If you get the extra 30, it gets you above the 75 cost of the control ward, and you get the control ward. So they're able to start with a control ward, and this is huge. It doesn't seem like it, and you wonder, where is the control ward going to be placed? And if you're a Team Liquid fan who's like glass half empty, you're like, oh, damn it, they're going to use a bot lane. It's just going to be in the river control brush, which is, you know, if you play solo queue, the red side team always wants to put a control ward in there. It's just going to be another bot lane thing for double lift and core JJ. And you're right and you're wrong. So the Papa's 200 IQ is on the ward spot here. Is the spot they put it in is a more risky one, but it's not the first one you expect with TL, but it is a really important one for Gragas. Now, the control ward spot they choose is Pixel Brush bot side. The reason why this is significant is that the jungle matchup here is a very obvious early mismatch. Xmithy is a Predator jungler, which, as we always talk about on the game, suggests that he doesn't have a keystone. This keystone doesn't help you in a combat scenario until after you've shopped. So early game, no keystone. Rek'Sai with Hail of Blades, a big favorite of Ender, who is casting this particular game, has the most presence and ganking presence. This was the keystone taken by Clid in his Rek'Sai game, where he just popped off game 3 of the semifinal against SK Telecom against G2. So huge mismatch in the keystones, and like we said already, huge mismatch in the 2v2s. These two need time, they need a keystone, they need an item, they need a level 6. These two are happy to fight from level 1. Probably level 2 Rek'Sai required, but chain into knock up full Q damage with Hail of Blades, that's already 75-80% of the Yasuo's health bar, and he has Ignite himself. So this control ward is both a spotter to allow guaranteed multiple camps, so like you think this is going to basically guarantee the Gragas 3 camps. It also is going to spot Rek'Sai's pathing or any LeBlanc roams bot side. So if Caps goes for one of his trademarks, screw this mid lane, I'm going to go bot lane to gank, you're going to catch him on this control ward. So for permanent vision, this is a really cool ward. It protects all of the blue side jungle. It doesn't matter that there was late vision placed top side, and it will get more. So the tactical inting coming through from Core JJ, and it required first, if you remember, a ward in this brush to make sure that no one was camping from, and also for Ezreal to stand in range so that you get the goal. Because remember, if Ezreal was staying away from Lux, you don't even get the quest anymore. Like, it was a multi-pronged plan they practiced in solo queue, but one that gets them a control ward that helps out Xmithy while also helping themselves. So it's a help you, help me scenario, rather than kind of bad TL where it's everyone help us in bot lane, otherwise GG, which is unfortunately sometimes where bad TL comes. So this is good TL. And I do like the control ward here a lot. Smithy pathing to top side. He has a control ward bot side. So either he's going to steal the enemy blue, or he's going to get the exact path he wants on a recall with the Predator boots available. So really nice control ward and cool strategy from TL to set this one up. Like, TL came prepped. You don't think of them as a Yasuo or Gragas team. You don't think of them as a creative early game team. This was really cool to see from TL, and I think TL fans should be coming in super high expectations for them when it comes to how they'll play in the LCS. Ganga's going for a power farm route from the jungle rather than a level 3 play. He's got bot lane and mid lane pushing, and he's naturally pathing to top side, so he doesn't have a natural place to gank. He wants to gank mid lane, but with the minion wave positioning, not going to be able to find something. Xmithy actually gets to take top scuttle in the face, as a big trade comes out here. Xmithy gets to take top side scuttle in the face of the Rek'Sai because LeBlanc was sin bot side on a ward. So the moment this happens, LeBlanc can't respond to the Gragas on the top side scuttle. Usually LeBlanc's pushing in Yasuo, LeBlanc gets first reaction, Rek'Sai flashes on top of Gragas, Fat Man dies with no keystone, Lolix Smithy. Like, you're getting ready for your Sejuani ult moment here, but with the control ward giving that permanent vision, persisting till 3 minutes 20, you can just take this scuttle topside and actually have no worries because your mid laner was closer to being able to respond. So, again, the ward gets them value in a way you might not have expected. Aggressive trade on double lift draws the heal out of core JJ. We talked about how all-inning onto the Lux is something you want to do here. They get one summoner, which is a nice start, but that's all. And Smithy on a reset actually going to stop the blue buff steal here. Very respectful from Jankos. Like, he can't steal away the enemy blue. He's not going to get a 3 buff like we mentioned. With boots up, even with a level lead, Jankos showing respect here. So it staved off some pressure. So Tremor Sense, this is interesting. So Tremor Sense spots Xmithy. If you look at the lane state here, it's a perfect lane state for any champion with all-in potential. Aurelia mid lane would always love the minion wave around here. It's just ahead of the middle part of the lane. It's on a side that suits Caps, and LeBlanc is extra punishing around this area because she has the ability to reset her positioning and then send out a skill shot. So it's all about hitting the chains and getting a kill. Jankos knows where Xmithy is, has level 4 and a huge amount of burst damage, and the moment the chain hits, this all-in is perfect. So let's watch the chain here, actually. You need to stop the chain hitting. That's the thing that happens here. So even though Xmithy is close, this is really well played by Caps. So how did that minion fall low? So Caps autos the last minion, which means that Jensen can't use it for cover because Distortion is actually going to kill it. So when Jensen tries to camp the back minion, he gets stunned here. Now, obviously, if you had win-walled the chains, it would have been fine. But that's actually super next level. I wouldn't have seen that unless I replayed. But specifically, the minion being prepped in the mid lane by Caps is what baits Jensen and Dorcas bot. Like, Caps for sure is looking for a last hit here, right? But it ends up being a prep that allows them to make this play around the mid lane and hit the chains here. So this is a really cool play. Jankos never fully commits to this knowing Gragas around if the chains miss. When the chains hit, cancels his back, flashes in. They know that they have insane burst damage and extra crowd control with the knock-up here. Like, Jensen can't live in this play. That's cool. That's a good play from Caps and Jankos. And it's a good illustration of why LeBlanc Rek'Sai is the winning 2v2 early. Like, there's just obvious conditions which are, if you hit the first CC, the flash follow-up CC is super good and super reliable. That also means that it's like level 5 to 3 for a little bit here. The blue buff pickup is super late. You're kind of lucky here that because it's Gragas Yasuo and not another mid laner that requires blue buff, some mid laners would actually be in a really bad spot if around 5 minutes 30 into the game the first blue wasn't taken. Because the second blue won't spawn to so much later in the game. But Gragas is the one that picks up blue here. So Xmithy's job is much more about shadowing Rek'Sai while Rek'Sai is relatively stronger, i.e. in the first 5 levels and arguably at level 6 with a vision lead. So it's why it's smart for him to not spend any time where he knows Rek'Sai won't be. At this point, it's like Rek'Sai shadowing Gragas, but if Gragas strings Rek'Sai along for the ride, he has outscale potential. And that's kind of the cool thing about this game is often in this case when you'd see a Rek'Sai recalling in the face of the enemy Gragas, this is what happens here, you'd be like, oh, it's Rek'Sai counter jungling. But it's actually the Gragas trying to keep pace with a Rek'Sai who's not been able to get multiple lanes ahead. It can only get mid lane ahead. Nice play overall from G2. We saw the replay of this. We don't need to watch it again. But otherwise, if Gragas is farming next to A Rek'Sai, it's kind of like when we have lane states where, say, a Jinx and a Lucian, like the Lucian's just pushing minions into Jinx and she's getting every CS. We all know that at some point, Jinx is going to use her gold and it's going to fit into a comp cleaner than Lucian more often than not. This was, again, really well played. So, let's talk about this as well. Lane state, identical lane state here, where Caps is trying to delay the amount of time before the minions are pushed into the wave, and as a melee champion without ranged push outside of his third Q, Jensen's trying to push up. It's the second time Jensen is punished for the same exact play. Okay. You'll see what you see very often. It's important to talk about this because it's actually something that was talked about a lot in analysis of IG during the group stages of MSI, is that they would always be very specific about when Ning came mid lane around certain timings. For example, when they thought that the enemy was on, say, a tier back timing as Ryze and wanted to shove kind of one wave to get the TP back off, that's when they'd be there to punish. And plays like this, where Caps is able early to call in Jankos and say, hey, Jensen's going to be recalling soon, just means that it's a natural path for Jankos to take camp. Around this time is when Caps will be telling Jankos, when he tries to full in push the wave, that's when you should come mid. He's on double dagger. He wants to back soon. And, lo and behold, Jankos just makes what ends up being a really easy gank. Again, the win wall, not going to win wall the chains. Jankos gets the kill. It's really easy. And this is a big lead. We talked about how this duo can snowball hard. This is already the definition of snowballing hard through mid lane. And so I think people in chat are always saying, how did they lose? Like, this is a huge lead for G2. They have a draft that PapaSmithy told me runs over teams with how hard it snowballs, kind of a win lane, win game draft that's very easy to execute when it comes to 5v5s. It's because the lane phase didn't end there. So, good illustration of what happens. It's kind of a weird one in that if you watch the bot side, if you watch the play here, you can actually track. He's got full stacks, as you can see, of his passive, and that's why he makes the all-in. But the play on the turret, he gets surprised by how much impact heals. The impact falls super low. If you watch this slow, after the stun, impact falls in 200 health. So this is like very close to a solo kill. So people are wondering why Wanda falls into this. But if you watch the replay super slow, he falls down to 20 health, roughly 20 health in this particular case, maybe 10 health. But he has biscuits and he also has corrupting potion, as we know. And so he falls down to less than like a third of an auto attack. If a minion hits the GP here, he dies, right? Like, this is insanely low, but he has oranges and biscuits up, as we know. And gets an instant 247 heal, pops the biscuits for another 73, and that's why he's able to live through the GP, through the damage from the Aurelia, and can flash in for the kill. It's actually pretty close to Wander kind of cramping his style at the end, as the W timing's great, but he does turn around at the right time here. It was a really nice bait coming through from Impact, but whenever you fall that low in health total, there's a bit of fortunate nature to it, and the mid lane play happens at the same time. So we should look at how the mid lane play starts. Amusingly, the mid lane play, which is started now, is that for once, it's the fool me once, fool me twice. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. This was the third attempt. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is the third time here. Is the third time the lane spot You can tell on the minimap already. LeBlanc and Yasuo are fighting over the mid lane reset. This time, they get in there. This time, Predator's popped early. Jankos is there. They get the first kill. And it's not just being run over. I think we all saw Caps was going to test the strength of Jensen on this one. So we watch how it starts. Again, it's all over a full reset, which has been basically the entire action around mid lane has been about lane resets. And this minion wave, Jensen's already shown that he's always going to stick around and try to shove it. So Caps opts into it. But the moment he misses chains, he actually has nowhere to go. Like, Jensen plays it well, but Caps is trolling. Like, at some point, on the 4th time you're fighting over a mid lane minion reset, you really have to give it up. Yeah, the 247 heal between the W and power healing into the 73 heal from, I believe, the start of the biscuit. Like, he got an instantaneous, let's count it all together. I believe it's like 350 health. Count all the green numbers together from when he falls to 20 health. 247, 215, what was the last number? 247, 315, 383 heal, which is why he is healthy enough to chase. If you're an extra 200 health down on that, you don't have the ability to chase and tank minions. But that's an insane instant heal with Time Warp, Tonic, Biscuiteers, and Corrupting Potion up. But credit to TL for actually on the 3rd time punishing this play. And they also punish it on a timing when Predator is up. Jankos is level 5 to start. So not Jankos. Smithy's level 5 to start the play. And yet, his Predator's already popped. They know this is where the action is going to happen. Again, it's happened twice before then. And Jensen picking up 2 kills here is the reason they can come back. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we get into the general action. So suddenly, Jensen's double buffs and up in the mid lane. And we've moved to the point where Smithy's post 6. And we already talked about if LeBlanc chooses the wrong time to step up or the wrong time to roam, now there's real punishment there from Jensen. And he even has some items behind it. Zeal and Berserker Greaves, not going to be a massive power spike. But it's going to be something. And chat's asking, do those kills ruin Caps' lane? In terms of a 1v1, it makes it harder. It accelerates the one item coming in where until you have kind of Ludens. If Ludens is done, then Caps has some kill potential with Ignite up. With Ignite down, he doesn't have any. But for the 2v2, it does hurt a lot because it's very forgiving for Gragas to turn around any plays here. And it also means that Gragas can camp mid really easily. And that also still shouldn't... So it's a multi-pronged thing. When I'm watching this game, the game's not over at this moment by any means. But the big problem is that Impact with no help has gone from Aurelia's going to push up, consider all-ins, and take maybe one turret play over the first 14 minutes, but always be kind of marginally ahead in CS. It's hard to deny a GP fully. Into, well, now actually in the natural lane, GP wins the 1v1 because he has a huge item lead and he can just grass proc you with Sheen and Phage compared to Wander, who's got awkward item timings. And actually, the jungler kind of has to go top to get a kill on Impact. Otherwise, it's going to be hard won by the GP. And the GP, as we already noted, is part of the best friend crew of helping Gragas Yasuo out wherever the Gragas is ganking. So then you have to sit there and be like, okay, so the wrong gank from Jankos can be turned by Gragas. The Gragas ganks on mid lane will work more often than not now with the gold injection. And top lane is winning for TL, and bot lane managed to farm it out and play defensively. Actually, the win lane comp from G2 is now presented with multiple areas that could be attacked by the Gragas and no naturally winning matchup apart from just Perks and Mickey being better at pushing them bot lane. What happens mostly in G2 games is that if one player ints, I'm thinking of Wonder in Spring Season pushing in on Camille too many times and being ganked 3 or 4 times by Vitality. I'm thinking about Caps and some of his games where he's played poorly in the 1v1. There's usually someone to pick up the slack. You think of Perks and his awesome game at the first week of the LEC split. But in this game, both solo lanes were supposed to be areas that G2 could snowball through pretty hard. And now both to different degrees are not going how Champ Select suggested. And not all 2v2 skirmishes are won because Gragas got back into the game. So that's kind of the awkward thing here is where is the good news story for G2? It's only bot lane. It's not, well, Caps has died 4 times, but Wonder's 20 CS up and bot lane turret dived with the jungler. This is very much, bot lane's doing pretty good at just farming it out. They got 1 turret plate. They got a CS lead. Top side's losing and mid lane could be camped and lose. So there's much less guarantees for a G2 draft like this, the win lane win game draft, to come online, and a lot more conditionals where now they have to kind of keep tabs of PapaSmithy because if they're their second, people die fast. So counter gank attempt is happening. PapaSmithy just rolls through mid lane. CoreJJ rolls through mid lane. They lose both control wards here. So much more comfortable to send resources mid lane and try to back up. And just the fact that at 9 minutes into the game, Gragas Yasuo are taking scuttles against LeBlanc Rek'Sai, that actually speaks volumes without being game defining. It shows that the map stayed around mid lane. That was 2 kills. Like, that should have been a lockout. They had huge lead through LeBlanc Rek'Sai. Now, actually, the 2v2, even, maybe slightly better than even, slight pressure lead to TL, which is really scary. Roam timing from CoreJJ here is awesome. So the objective is dead, right? Objective is dead. Scuttlecrab is dead. Caps has no Ludens complete, but, you know, he does a lot of damage. Rek'Sai does a lot of damage. You understand why he comes in for the poke. It's to open up options. The thing is, CoreJJ is close to this fight, and PapaSmithy has ult up. And through the shield, into the Yasuo ult, into the stun, like, this is actually beautiful levels of CC overlapping. Caps actually has no way to get out. Caps is thinking when he starts this, at worst, I'm going to get a free chunk. And even if I get ulted, I have ultra mobility on LeBlanc to make the play. Because if you notice, Caps comes in, hasn't used his ultimate. He comes in, throws out the chain. Like, he doesn't use his Mimic. That's the thing, is that his Mimic isn't used in this case, but it doesn't matter whether he can get to his W2 or whether he can Mimic Distort, because at the end of the day, he's perma-CC'd. So it's really nice overlapping CC from the Lux. Now, they knew Lux was around because Lux most recently cleared out a ward, but it's a good point from chat in that you couldn't know for sure that Lux had stayed because CoreJJ jukes towards the right, but then runs to back up the play. CoreJJ changes his mind at this point, and G2 can't know for sure he'd be there first. So you're right, chat, in that they knew he was around the area. They didn't think he is stuck there. And Caps is a little bit towards the greedy level. He's waiting for the tether to arm. The tether arms there. Let's gauge how much time he has. W over. The W is safety. The chain arms now. I'm going to watch the rooted text to see when the chain arms. Sorry for the slowies. Dives in. When does the root land? They want the root to land so they can guarantee. They want the root to land so they can guarantee the Q, right? So he could W back from now onwards. He doesn't want to W back earlier. Maybe he never saw CoreJJ in his periphery, but it seems like the call from G2 is we can kill this guy. He's squishy. So that's why they're going for the stun duration here. He can W back from now onwards. There's probably about a half a second where he would have been safe to get out. After this happens, though, he can't W yet. He can't W yet. The CC here is perfectly layered, and he can't actually get out from that moment onwards. So, like, the amount of window here, if the call is get the kill on the Gragas to actually get out, is less than you would imagine. And it might be the Caps either didn't see Core JJ or didn't care because he thought he would have more than a half second to get out. But it was just a really nice collapse. The CC chain there is pretty beautiful from TL. Core JJ did not throw out a binding instantly. He waited his time. And I appreciated that from Core JJ. He's very good at leading his enemy, and he's very good at kind of reading the scenario about when to throw out CC. But G2 tried to make an aggressive move that probably would have been fine in the context of the game they were playing earlier when it was 2 kills to 0 bot lane. Mid lane, sorry. It wasn't that from the moment things started to go bad. And there's always extra tools. There's that cannon barrage we talked about that can always follow the Gragas. We know about the Yasuo ult as well. Like, TL have a 2,400 gold lead as a scaling comp against a team that's trying to run over you at 1-2 item. And that 1-2 item is already going to be delayed. So things right now, unless G2 can find a way to find a hard winning lane, become really hard unless they can also play the perfect fight around it. So they'll pile in. They'll take down an Infernal Drake. Also, Impact got another kill. So Aurelia basically lost lane now. I mean, you're not wrong on that because he gets the kill credit. The Trinity Force timing is 10 minutes 50 against half a phage. So the item lead is always going to be massive top. And whatever you build here, like a Tiamat to try to wave around a turret or 2 parts of a Trinity Force, you're always going to be a second-class citizen as the Aurelia. So now Aurelia's lost lane, and Yasuo can't solo deal with LeBlanc, but also is getting to Shiv point where LeBlanc can no longer freeze and have those all-in options that were there before. So it's a really early Trinity Force for a 1,200 gold lead at top. And then compared to Rek'Sai LeBlanc that requires a LeBlanc chain, let me introduce you to Gragas Yasuo, which is very easy. So now mid lane's done. No way back into mid lane for Caps. And Wander can't 1v1. So 11 minutes in, mid lane's done, top lane's done, and Caps is doing well. And there is a recent data point to compare this to, which again is the Perks kind of unbelievable performance in week number 1 of the LCK, where he was able, and when his team was behind him, G2 were able to set up lane states where Perks could get a huge CS lead over Patrick against Origin and still win the game. But top lane and mid lane being done here and bot lane being all that can salvage them is pretty narrow for 11 minutes into the game. Now, this is pretty early for there to be 2 lanes losing against you. Also consider Gragas will win skirmishes more often than not with almost any even numbered play, and GPO can be used to help in bot lane. So the chances for Perks and Mickey to solo make a lead in the 2v2, their only kind of good area of the map, is very small. And Doublelift and Core JJ have draft really, really respectfully. So the Splitfoot Xayah game that got Perks so much compliments against Origin is very hard to recreate here when TL have a comp where you're like, ooh, don't want to be around mid because what if Gragas is there? And ooh, if we go bot, GP can just ult there. So TL have a lot of insurance for a Perks pop-off. They bought the Umayan insurance policy, kind of like the Volcano insurance policy, I guess. And they also are winning in the other matchups. So this is a really tricky game to reset as G2. The only way you can win this, in my opinion, is for Caps to go on a 3-man roam, kill GP a couple of times, and have one to set up a side of the map. Because G2 have a teamfight comp that wants to fight early that will find it really, really hard in order to take over the game. Like win lane, win game, loses lanes. Lets you know that things are in a bad spot. Like Jensen can walk up, can be a pretty big jerk. Had to flash out, so that was actually a little bit silly in hindsight. But so many objectives that should be impossible. For example, the Gragas GP to be picking up the Rift Herald are possible because mid lane is basically kind of out of the game in some ways. Impact's getting free turret plates, getting a free Rift Herald, like TL getting a smorgasbord of objectives in the early game because of G2's mistakes and because Smithy pathed pretty smartly in this game. Like his Predator counter gank in mid lane was the first really important thing that that started the role, and then these sort of plays never happen if Caps hasn't died a couple of times already. Jam the Rift Herald top side. They share the gold there. Wander's laning phase is now over. A level down, getting chased down by a GP. This feels like when you lose lane to a Shen who then teleports to other lanes. And it's actually, this sort of game on the GP is my fear about new Mordekaiser, because new Mordekaiser has some lanes that he wins, and he spreads his lead very reliably because in team fights he just ults whoever's doing well on the enemy team out of the fight. And it's the same to me as if Shen, GP, Malzahar, Skarner, like if these champions can solo kill or get lane leads and you have to build a QSS against them, then you're like 3,000 gold behind because you spent 1,300 gold on QSS and you died a few times and lost CS, so you're down effectively 3,000 gold. That's what's happening with the GP here, where he is winning the 1v1 and he's helping you win the bot lane with his ult. So it's pretty big disaster to try to make anything happen. To Perks' credit, they do actually find 4 turret plates in bot side, given how much play is happening top side the moment you drop the Rift Herald. Perks and Mickey are able to walk up. But, yeah. I definitely do agree that Mordekaiser is joining in the QSS tax because you can't cleanse the ultimate. If they made the ultimate cleansable, regular cleanse, then I think it makes them a lot more balanced. But I'm very excited to cast some Mordekaiser games in Pro. So, Essence Reaver done. 1 items are done, but only for 2 members. And you kind of see the quandary is that we have 90% crit Yasuo, Trinity Force and more on the GP. 1 item done Gragas. Ezreal has his usual hodgepodge. Like TL are ahead in effective itemization, understandably being 4,000 gold ahead, and the Infernal early isn't going to overcome those numbers against a comp that wants to fight with an item lead kind of around 16 to 20 and close out a game. We saw the stat right. G2 doesn't always blow up teams in the first 15, but damn do they accelerate the game super fast between 15 and 30. And yet, with Wander being probably never combat ready compared to the enemy GP, and it being impossible to force a fight far away from the GP, like at this point, G2 are running short on force options, you know? So if we compare this to their series against Origin, they're way further behind in this one than that one, and setting up ways for Perks to actually find super meaningful permanent CS leads isn't the same. In that game, Perks pushed from red side as the Xayah for a good kind of 8 minutes in the mid game when it was around Baron Vision. If you remember, he would push up to here, and G2 had entire Baron Vision control. And you can just delay the game because between 22 and 35 minutes, if you don't have Baron Vision, it's impossible to close the game without contesting that Baron. So the fact that G2 could hold this and have Perks perma push and topside meant they could keep the game going as long as they want. In a game like this, where the only thing you have as G2 is blue side Xayah, is perma pushing here, is maybe you can fall back and pick up Drakes, but the Drakes aren't a win condition that keep the game going any longer than Origin wanted to, TL wanted to, and TL have globals and long range abilities to punish that side of the map. So already you're playing against a less rewarding side of the map if you're going to be perma pushing bot side, trying to get a big CS lead on the Xayah. But you're not going to be able to close the game because guess what? TL just turn on Baron. You know, they have things like the wind wall, and they have high damage around the Baron, and Perks will just have to teleport over, and then the split push pressure around a strong Xayah doesn't matter anymore. So You can't recreate what worked for G2 against Origin in a game like this, both because of the size of map they're on, but also the team comp that G2 put together. So their solo lanes can't win the game, and Perks alone can't take it down. So this is where, as a viewer, I looked at it and I'm like, I actually think that G2 has no way back into the game unless TL make multiple mistakes. Now, G2 can be a miraculous team. Anything could happen, but TL in form, you get the TL kind of boilerplate points that you would always say about the team and how smart they are and how good they are at closing out games and their veterancy. Veteran teams don't lose in scenarios like this. TL, just like SKT at MSI, if you can quell the early game team into a post-turret plates moment where you're even in the game state and potentially have more tools to play the map, it doesn't matter if you're a proactive crazy team or a reactive scaling team. In this scenario, if you have more tools, you just win. It doesn't matter what the enemy team has to their side. Good call in chat. This basically made G2 play into TL. TL can now play TL's classic game plan of the last 2 years because they controlled G2 in the early game. So really good clarity on that point from KOR in chat. Like, what can G2 force? G2 are one of my favorite teams to watch because even from behind, they're always able to say, let's get this guy who's doing this wrong. Let's force this guy over here. You got to lead over there. In a game like this, they're still looking for the force. Like, Caps is caught on a ward. He doesn't know this brush is warded. It's not the most likely brush to have a regular ward in. If you have a ward here at all, it's a control ward spotting for vision that's placed there to contest the Cloud Drake that's about to spawn. But G2, even from behind, they're a team that will always try to make something happen that plays their win condition and gets them back in the game. They don't draft this game. They draft the early game comp, and they think, if Caps comes around, we get a triple kill here, then we get our items on time, then our one-item teamfight comp actually won at one items, a teamfight that seems set up to be won by TL, and we can get back into the game. But wards like this are the savvy ones. We should find out who warded this brush and when. Who gets the credit? Who's the big brain? The ward is Core JJ's. So Core JJ, if you're watching on the minimap, pings the on the way, checks it, and puts down a vision there. Now, it's technically actually in vision of this ward, but I don't think they actually noticed it. So went full safety first to put down the ward. And no surprise that Core GG was the smart one with the ward. If they were watching that part of the map, they would have been able to see there was a ward there. I don't think they were, and that's kind of understandable for G2. But LeBlanc runs from the bot side. Doesn't go... If you watch the path here, Caps feels hard done by because, yes, they know he's coming through River, but he doesn't get spotted in this vision. He tries to go for a way that will get around vision. I wonder if he was spotted by the control ward. Probably was, right? What do we think, chat? I'm never 100% on vision. Do you think this control ward spots him? What does chat think? It probably does. The angle makes it a bit weird. No? Yes? Yeah, distortion was spotted. So the general thought is yes. Okay. I'm never 100% certain about vision radiuses when there are like walls and stuff in compare, but I'm going to agree with you. It probably was spotted. He still thinks he has more time than he actually does. I do like how TL played it though. Like, this is really decisive. The tell for me is the fact that Xmithy is facing that way. Like, when the action is happening here, the fact that he's facing this way is super suspicious. Like, usually, you'd be facing the other way. See, like, he's facing this way, which makes sense for this angle of a gank. But then he walks like this, stops, and then all in. So it's a little bit suspicious. But I like how decisive it is. You don't ever try to R there. You always E-flash as the Gragas, because then you get the Drake 100%. So still a good overall call from the side of TL and how they executed it. But I think they've scouted G2 out really well in this kind of post phase. Because when G2 does fall behind, they're always thinking about, all right, where is the scene of the place where we make the proactive move, where we get something that brings us back in the game? And TL had kind of scouted out or incepted a lot of those scenarios and were ready for them. It kind of reminds me of like what this matchup, glass half full, could have been in the final. Like if you looked at the most rose-tinted TL versus IG, SKT versus G2, you say, well, SKT almost weathered the storm against G2, and IG were very well scouted by a TL team that understood how to downplay Ning. What if they did this to G2 in the final? And then obviously history shows they just got rolled over. It required mistakes from G2 in this series for sure, and a lot of their practice, I imagine, around this tournament was suboptimal. But I do want to credit TL for being really intelligent about how they played against G2, not just in the early game, because remember, they actually got pumped by a couple of smart ganks, but in the moment where you know that G2's MO is to get, by some team standards, a little bit desperate and try to make hard engaged plays that are pretty low percentage, but if they're pulled off, they're like medium to high risk, but high reward from a G2 perspective, because they're thinking, well, if I don't make this Caps roam play, the game's just going to lose. That is G2's way to play. And that is kind of G2's way to reset this game after the mistakes they've made. And TL was ready for it. And for that, I do credit TL. And then you get to spot, I mean, oh. Look at those items on it, on Jensen. He's so fed. So what's happening on the map? Jensen's pushing, Gragas is backing him up. And this is what we talked about, is that GP plays one side lane. Yes, it can be awkward from behind if the Yasuo to play a side lane, but in this game, they can play 3 lanes because Yasuo got so far ahead in the mid game. And now Gragas just shadows him. Goes straight down the lane, does Smithy. Cask up. Yanko sees him, but it's Infinity Edge, Shiv, 18 minutes Yasuo, and he does so much damage. Actually disgusting damage. The TPs come in. Impact doesn't really care. This is a way for G2 to get more members there, which is why they're okay with starting the play. But Core JJ is a hero. Look at Core JJ here. Flash heal over the wall. Really exciting passage of play, but TL having the extra gold is the difference. Think back to this play, which will play faster. Imagine this play where there's no IE on Yasuo. Consider what happens, right? Let's say there's no IE on Yasuo. Xayah TP's in. Aurelia TP's in. Doublelift's TP is down. That's why he's mid lane here. Doublelift's TP is down. He can't join the fight on bot side, and Lux has to walk up. G2 will always have 5 members there faster because of this, right? Let's watch when it becomes a 5-man play. 5-man play now. Ezreal has done no damage in the fight. If you consider this same fight, removing Infinity Edge, let's say it's Static Shiv into Joram's Fist and a pickaxe, the members of G2 don't explode. Caps for sure finds a distortion out and is low health, but could re-engage the fight. And because the double TP was down, the play from G2 is the sort of play that they're always able to get more members there. But it doesn't work because Jensen has so much gold. Like if this was their first attempt to get back into a kind of closer game, and Caps hadn't died looking for a flank a moment ago, and GP hadn't gotten a solo kill on the top side, Like, there definitely could have been inroads here, and chat's arguing if Perks could TP faster. I mean, as an AD carry, if you TP here, it can be an int TP half the time. But what we're trying to say is, like, health bars explode here because it's 100% crit Yasuo with Infinity Edge and a Shiv, and the items are behind on the side of G2. If G2 has even items here, this is where you win fights as this comp. This comp is built to fight this early in the game, but they're losing against a scaling team fight comp. That's just so hard. Look at this GP. He is a really thick pirate. Wards here are super shallow from G2. They don't control any sides of the map. Perks, who we talked about as kind of a split push win condition in a similar game where they were a little bit closer to against Origin but didn't have a way to get back in, has to clear in the mid lane because he's the only person with clear wave clear. G2 have to put their, like, I want to split push, get 100 CS win condition like I did against Origin player into mid, because their other split pushes are Ignite, Teleport LeBlanc, can't really double distort into the minion wave in mid lane, and Aurelia, you know. The wave clear between these two is super minimal. It's only Perks for wave clear in a game where they're losing. So Perks has to play mid lane and thus can never get a CS lead. And what's Yankos doing? Now, Yankos is trying to randomly find a flank. Where did Caps come from? Am I blind? Oh, I'm watching him on the left. Okay. Caps distorts out of vision, gets bound. Let's watch this binding. CoreJJ sees him on a ward. Oh. Puts him in an area where you're almost always going to land the binding. CoreJJ. It is a WR, right? But it's not impossible to miss this skill shot. It's just that CoreJJ hit all of them this game. WR like that works when you're ahead. He is not ahead. And these are the games, again, that get the craps callings, right? Like, people are really ready to poo-poo on the LeBlanc. It's just, in this game state that we're in, let's call it from here, what exactly does LeBlanc do? Like, LeBlanc has pretty decent single target burst on a squishy member. So what is it that LeBlanc would like to do? Can't side lane against GP, just going to get pummeled with Qs and lose the health bar trade to grasp GP with Trinity Force Hysterics. Definitely can't side lane against the Yasuo. Doesn't want to be in the Ezreal Lux lane. Like, this champion is to combine with Rek'Sai around the mid lane, like we mentioned, and to snowball other people. But Aurelia solo lost to GP, and Zyra Khan has to wave clear because they lost map control. So actually, LeBlanc can only suicide by time getting 1-for-1s. So Caps is like, well, I need to get a 1-for-1 on someone. Like, he doesn't really have a way to stay in the game apart from suiciding. The best example of this is, think of other champions that suicide from behind. I'm thinking of Jace can suicide from behind. Yorick definitely suicides from behind. Quinn. Like, if all your champion can do is apply map pressure and your team is way behind, what are you going to do, right? Kha'Zix's a great example from chat. Like, at least Karthus is not an example because Karthus can just farm and has a global. But champions like Vi, champions like Kha'Zix, in this case the LeBlanc, from behind where you can't actually match any side lanes, you kind of have to try to suicide for pressure, otherwise the game's over. So the moment that you're 2-death LeBlanc, he's just trying to go 3-death, 4-death, 5-death. Think of it this way. He came into the casino and played blackjack, and he got kind of like bad beats, like split on aces twice, and got bad beats. He didn't really get bad beats. Like, he played bad, but like, whatever. He got bad beats. At that point, he's already run out of his he's already run out of his bankroll. His bankroll's done. But he promised his wife he'd come back with an extra $200. Caps doubled down for the next 4 deaths. That's what happened here, is he doubled down, doubled down, doubled down, doubled down, because he's fighting from way behind. The moment you're 2 and 4, like, he's negative $2,000 at the casino, right? But he promised he'd come back with 200. He's doubling his stake. He's borrowing money from friends because he's not coming home. Like, his wife was very clear: come back with $200 or don't come home. And that's what happened here, is that Caps is just trying to double down with negative money, with his crappy items. He's got, his one dress shirt. It's got a stain on it at this point. He had a couple too many cocktails, but he convinced someone to give him another try. He's doubled down. He's doubled down. And yeah, at the end of this game, as ADC Dead Roll says, he's basically homeless. Like, he's not going home to his wife here. He's not kissing her. There's no happy ending to this story for Caps. He's literally died 6 times, guys. Work with this analogy. And this is the problem. Like, how often do you see this? What would you say are G2's camps in this game? Like, they actually... What camps do they control of their own jungle here? You know what I mean? Like, what camps do they control? I guess maybe they're Raptors. They maybe control Raptors because they have outer mid lane turret up. They definitely don't control their wolves. I don't think they control Krugs. Like, yes, he's killing it right now, but it's such a long lane in bot lane. There's a lot of ways Krugs could be attacked. Like, I think they control Raptors. I don't think they control wolves. They control Raptors, and they got like a timeshare with Krugs. Like, G2 was always about trading up, and there aren't any of those trades left here. And Gragas can just go between helping with the mid lane siege and going top, unless Jensen just ints. This is where he fails the blast plant, right? The Jensen blast plant. We'll wait for the replay on that one. Classic. The Jensen blast plant is the sort of mistake that actually buys G2 time. That's so good. The only time EU fans smiled during this game. Let's watch it in slow-mo. I'm out of here, see? Oh my god, look at this. This is so epic. This is actually like... Does anyone in chat know like Dick Dastardly and Muttley from like Wacky Races? Watch this play. This is actually something out of a cartoon. Jensen, on his escape, actually bounces into the unburrow. Wait for it. Oh, man. Actually, the most misfortune has ever befallen him. Don't worry, Muttley. I'm going to win the race. I actually forget how Dick Dastardly sounds, but actually the most misfortune that could ever befall a Yasuo. This is a great replay. Thank you very much, NA Production. Look at this one. I'm out. They'll never catch me. Red-handed. Actually bounces into Unburrow. Oh, hilarious. And then GP wastes his Cannon Barrage because he's like, oh, okay, I'll try and save him. Like, they get a map control ult. They get the map control GP ult that allows Wonder to push up a bit more greedily. And they get the shutdown on Jensen there. So it's actually really big to the side of G2. Perks gets this top lane turret because of that mistake. And, you know, TL still deserve full credit. They played excellently this game. But in a different game where, let's say Jensen made that mistake 5 minutes earlier, G2, like we talked about, they'll look for an in. They'll look for an in, whether it's Caps trying to camp and double down. They'll try and push. They'll try and siege. When they get that little in, they get a lot. So killing Jensen here wasn't just a spree. They kill him With the GP ult down, they push up the top side because they've already laid down vision. They get the top lane outer turret, which was looking like impossible to get to. That was the lane that Jensen was just split pushing down again and again. They had no way to get there. They owned that one completely. That lane is now G2's territory for a while, and finally Perkz does get to play a side lane, something that he was denied to for a long time because of Jensen's mistakes. So while they get something, we know that given the team comps, it's not enough to really turn it in. Like, TL needed to make 2 or 3 more mistakes on that level, maybe to fumble a Baron, to really allow G2 a way back in, and even then it's not likely. You still have to outplay Gragas Yasuo, which is super hard. What's new is that people are now saying that Impact is also carrying his team. I think the champion pool for Impact has gotten better. I do think that the casting team overrates how hard a carry Impact has been. I think Impact has been less of a Eeyore, like he's fought back a lot more, and I think he's played lanes smart, and I think he's made his champion pool work. Like in this game, he gets the solo kill, not because he presses his like W at the right time, but because Wander sees a kill that's not there. Like, I don't think Impact's winning lanes like I've been kind of led to believe. I think he's actually hanging in there but punishing mistakes, which is still more than you kind of expected from Impact in spring. Like, he's not carrying games, but he is running away with advantages he's given. You know what I mean? He's not creating solo advantages, even though in this game he solo killed Wander. All I mean is, if you come away being from this game being like, I think Impact's the best top in NA because he solo killed Wander, I'd be like holding up my hand, being like, actually, I think Wander solo killed Wander. But GP is good. TL slowly going through the map. G2 find it so hard to force anything. Morellonomicon with all of the gold bought by Caps. Caps has one rotation on Ezreal still, I would say. I missed the start of this fight, so I'll watch it again. So TL take over Baron control. G2 pushing through the mid lane. There's a lane ward, as we know. Stuff like this is so cool. So the catch on to Mickey and Perkz here. Let's just talk about this because it's basically the win moment of the game. Perkz has flash up. Mickey has flash up. Mickey just used Grand Entrance, so he's running short on mobility. But it all starts from a double lift slow. The slow hits. GP gets into melee range, and CoreJJ doesn't greed. Consider this fight from CoreJJ's perspective, right? Walks in, contests the vision. He's just poking at this point. He's going to put down an E at some point. He uses his shield. He holds binding for the entire time. And then obviously hits the ultra Bazinga binding. But this is a fucking sexy play from support Lux. Like, in a tournament where obviously it started with Steve missing every binding, like, isn't there something romantic about CoreJJ on his $1 million team with his no doubt $1 million contract? Hitting the double binding and playing such a flawless Lux game. This is really nice. Like, there's so many times you could throw the binding that for him to hit that one was really nice. Really, really well played. All from a slow. 2 people dead. You have Win War and the Lux W, so you basically don't take Baron damage. By the way, Yasuo Lux don't take Baron damage. Sick wombo combo. It didn't even have to use... Do you want to appreciate something even more beautiful? This play. You know what the sexiest part about this play is? It didn't require Gragas Yasuo at all. Like, the fact that they got a double kill on Perkz and Mickey, who had their flashes up, while Jensen and Smithy used nothing. Like, that just means you can never contest Baron. Even if you had 3 unsealed spellbook smites, how do you ever get near the Baron when 2 of your members died? It'd be 3v5, and they kept the Gragas Yasuo combo up. Like, that's what happens when you play really good. So shout out to Doublelift and And Core JJ, like, this is all them. Impact, close the distance, get some damage in, but just the first two slows, man. Made it easy when they both lined up in straight line. Okay, let's think about it from their perspective. How do you play this out as Perks and Mickey? You want to go in different directions. That part makes sense. Mickey knows they have no wards. So Perks knows they have no wards bot side, so he jukes. The slow comes in. At this point, like, it's about taxiing. Like, Perks is walking in a straight line, right? He's just walking in a straight line. Like, he doesn't have any other options here. Like, he has to walk in that way. So yes, you say it's easy. What other direction would you have suggested he went in? They both could have flashed, but it kind of, yeah. Look, it's super complicated. I think it's a really good play from TL. You can say it's average from G2, but it's not like G2 played poo-poo there. Like, that was a lot of good TL, and G2 just getting caught by, of all things, like, you don't think you're going to have to use Featherstorm for Pirate walking into melee range. You want to keep it for binding, and yet they played really well there. And now they're trying a brush camp from 7 minutes behind. That was really nice from Perks. It's really nice from Perks. Like, he literally looks tasty. This is really good. These are the things where G2 fans think of future games, where this is a game winner. Like, he baits so hard with stasis. Yeah, they have 3 stopwatches. There's 3 different people that can make this play, but you will always use Cask onto him. He's ready for a Flash E and also a Cask, and they actually get 2 for 1, 7,000 gold down against Baron. Really nice play from G2. Not going to change the game, right, because you're still too far behind, but a good look for future games. It's kind of how I think about plays like that. Three members strong, TL can still push. Oh, this was the AD carry flank attempt. So they see the AD carry pushing top, so they know that it's 3v3 at worst in the mid lane. The flank attempt comes in, but I think they get the call that GP ult is still up. So there's no real way for them to collapse on this. Like, you think of what's coming through the front. The Aurelia doesn't have ult. They have no force alive for there to be a pincer move with Perks coming from behind. So in hindsight, it's a bad TP. I think when the TP comes in, we'll think about it. The TP comes in now, and the remaining people alive are Wonder without ult. Caps, who has Mimic Distort up, and Mickey without ult. They can't contest full health Core JJ double lift and impact with shields. So it is a bad teleport overall. With Baron, they can't defend even if Perks stays. So I don't think it's wrong for Perks to be top lane pushing. I think he would have only got one more wave, but him teleporting there is another resource used that's not going to get them anything. Are they going to be way out of position for, say, the Drake spawn, even if it wasn't something they were going to realistically be able to contest? You know it's bad when your LeBlanc is 2 items against 3.5 item Yasuo. Same thing with top. 3 items and stopwatch versus just a 2 item and Tiamat. And all G2s can fight from way behind. Like, they can't delay the game anymore. They don't have Baron. They don't have a way in. Double Lift gets to rejoin. It's pretty standard closeout from here. This is super unlucky, right? Core JJ puts the control ward in, and it ends up being just around the bend to not spot the previously placed ward. and G2 get the kill here. Really unlucky with vision toggle. The fact that those still exist in the game, Riot has talked about normalizing control wards and banana bushes for a long time. Like, I think that should never happen. Like, I think that's... I don't think you can remake it because it's there for both teams, but it should never happen. Like, vision should be, if it's in a brush, it sees the whole brush. At least, right? I can understand not being able to see around walls when it comes to amount of vision a ward gets, but, like, is it Impact's fault that he dies here? I don't think so. This is so weird. Really, really weird. Like, it feels like something that you would find in teamfight tactics. Like, you know, in teamfight tactics where, like, your champions lose interest in killing the Krugs and you die to Krugs, or all the other little bugs in the game where you're like, oh, that's cute, but, like, come on, game, be better. That's how I feel with the wards like that, where it's like, you know, please. And those single kills buy them time, but not even full reset. They can't even get Impact to teleport back with his team. The Goldie's not growing in scenarios like this, so at least that kill gets them CS. But the CS is on to champions that won't be able to fight against 3+ item TL. We talked about that in Champ Select, where G2 want to win lane, win game, play around snowboard 1 item, 2 item builds, but every third item they buy is better purchased for TL. GP's third item stronger than Aurelia's. Gragas' third item stronger than Rek'Sai's. Yasuo's third item way stronger than LeBlanc's. I guess Xayah is the only holdout there, but it's not enough to overcome and stem the bleeding. And they also have Windwall that makes Xayah's damage output, cuts it out in the fight quite a lot. There's a good discussion about in the chat. I believe it's Madman998. Skill-based mechanics like place ward better are usually fine, but at the same time, you shouldn't feel like you're playing in such small quirks. I understand the soul of what you're trying to say. Like, I'm never saying make the game less complex. I just don't think it's a better game because your control ward was slightly placed too close to the wall. Then you can, like, there's no next level on that. Like, there's no chance that you scout out that ward early and then fail place a control ward to bait the enemy team to engage on you. And then you next level the fact that you knew that the vision was in a dodgy spot. Like, that never happens. So because it's just, no, that's how walls work. They're a bit crappily coded in brush, in specific brushes. I just can never feel good about it. There's no 200 IQ around a ward like that. It's just, oops, my control ward was 0.5 Teemos off, and now it's not actually a real ward. Like, if I'm Impact, and on the VOD review, there's no chance Impact's like, I should have known. You know what I mean? Like, it's too much. There's too much in the game, too much burden for that to be potentially turned around. And to call it a fail ward, like, if it's just outside the brush, I think it's fine. But if it's in the brush, I have problems with that. I respect if you don't agree. We talked in Champ Select about how they have so much extra oomph with things like the GP ult after the Gragas cast engage. This was just a great example of that. True Shot Barrage from late. That means Xayah's dead. She's all of the wave clear on the team, so you just get all the free kills in the back end. I would love to speak to G2 about how they review this game. I think the first answer in the review would be that they're like, look, you know, we weren't screaming and practicing that much. We weren't that serious. You saw our troll games before, right? Whatever. But I think in a world where they were being super serious about the game, I'd love to hear how much of the blame for the loss they ascribe to what. Because if I think about why G2 lose this game, it's because Wanda got solo killed by the GP, much more than Caps getting killed a million times by Gragas Yasuo, because getting killed by a combo is kind of understandable. Like, you draft Gragas Yasuo to to camp mid, right? The moment you see Gragas Yasuo, you think camp mid, camp mid, camp mid. And in Korea, we had a Gragas Yasuo meta, but it fell away. There's a great example of this. Hum Alive played Gragas Yasuo in week 1, I think, of the LCK. And they fall a little bit behind. And then it's super sad watching them, like, 4-man group with Gragas Yasuo, and like, we'll go find someone to combo. Meanwhile, the enemy team just plays 3 lanes and wins. And I think G2 in this game, the answer to Gragas Yasuo camping mid is to A, get a good start on the champion against that. They did. They got 2 kills on the Yasuo before the Yasuo got going. And then play side lanes. Play away from Gragas Yasuo. Have LeBlanc roam, or have LeBlanc just super safe farm while you camp top or camp up. But the moment that Wonderfell got solo killed and the item lead got so big, the 2 kills especially, the GPP at the second kill having an 11-minute Triforce, they could never go top. And Yasuo was perma-pushing mid, and Rek'Sai really had nowhere to go. At that point, maybe you just have to teleport and send Rek'Sai bot lane, 4-man the turret, and get Xayah out on the map early. And this is kind of splitting hairs because Xayah got 4 turret plates in the 2v2. But the big problem G2 had is they draft win lane, win game, and they ended up losing pressure around both solo lanes. Mid lane because of a bit of Cap's over-eagerness and the 2v2 being a strong 2v2 after level 6 for TL. And top side from a failed all-in onto the GP. So I think where you equate all of this is kind of on you as viewers to decide. I come away being more disappointed with how Wonder played the GP lane, because the moment he died that early, I don't think that the Rek'Sai could have stabilized the lane much. If you want to look at his Caps trolling and then dying 7 times being the reason they lost, like, I think you can focus on that and you're not 100% wrong. But I guess that's how I look on it, is I think about how G2 have won other games where someone came out with Wonder was trolling, or Caps was trolling, or Perks was trolling, and it's getting a win elsewhere. And they just ran out of places. Summoner's Rift got too narrow for them, and they just had no way to get back in the game. So big shout out to TL. I really like how they played around Caps' attempts to get back in the game, all of his creative angles that they had scouted out. Like, TL really dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to catch those, and in the end made Caps look like a feeder. So they definitely gave Caps the craps name for this game, but I thought it was an interesting one to review. Like, the map stuff was very subtle, but I think it was interesting to track. Anyways, that's going to be game number 2, VOD review. Thank you very much for everyone watching. We've got one more game. It's going to be the final game. I actually haven't watched it. I'll have fresh eyes on TSM versus Fnatic. So we'll take a break. I'm going to play some ads, get some water. We can answer some questions, and then final review of the night. So join me in just a few minutes.